He waited for my boyfriend to leave. I'm a first-time poster, and my storytelling isn't that great, but I came across this page and figured I should tell my story, and maybe help others learn from it. I'm a girl who lives in a good neighborhood in suburban New York City. This happened back in early November of 2015. I was 17 years old and was with my boyfriend at the time. He was 18 years old, around 5'10", and mostly muscle. He drove his car to my house around 8 p.m. after work and parked across the street. He couldn't stay long and was only stopping by for a little because I haven't seen him in a while. As time went on, we realized it was already 12 a.m. and it was time for him to start heading home. I walked him out to the front of my house, but we decided to talk a little more and hang out in front of my house. It was already 12:30 and we were sitting on my front steps, with the only light being the street lights on the corner of my block and one of the main roads. He was ready to leave, so I gave him a hug and a kiss goodbye and watched him walk to his car to make sure he's safe. The car is only a few feet from where I was, but I'm a worrywart. I stay on my front steps as I watch him get into his car and make a U-turn to turn onto the main road, which would lead him towards the direction of his house. Literally the same second his car turns the corner and drives away, a man turns the corner of my block. I live in the corner house, and starts walking with a fast pace. Before I could take another breath, he was already walking faster up to the walkway of my front steps. I got up and yelled at him to go away. He didn't listen. So I quickly got up and ran into my house, not looking behind me, and almost missing the handle to the front door because I was sweating and shaking. But thankfully I got in safe and locked it. There is a window next to my front door, which shows a clear view of the front of my house. When I looked outside, he was there. His back was facing the house and he was on my front steps. I ran into my kitchen, took out our biggest knife I could find, and hid on the floor behind my front door just in case he turned around and saw me. I could have sworn I saw a small metal object in his hand, almost like a knife. I called my boyfriend because he was only a few blocks away, and he turned his car back around. I didn't look outside until I heard his car door slam about 2 minutes later and saw him running to my house. I rushed him into the house and explained what happened. I was shaking and crying, could barely speak. Even though he was pretty big and muscular, he isn't the person who would run after the guy. I was scared to call the cops, in fear of my parents waking up, because my boyfriend was supposed to leave earlier than 12 a.m., and my parents would lecture me for being outside at 12:30 a.m. The whole event took place within a 10-minute interval. The guy was never found, and I couldn't recall what he looked like, due to how dark it was outside. I only saw him for a split second, running towards me, and he seemed thin, dark-skinned, and around 5'9"-ish. I had no idea what he wanted from me. He never said a word, and I don't know how long he waited for my boyfriend to leave so he could strike. It scares me till this day, knowing someone was hiding around the corner watching me and my boyfriend talk for about a half hour. I've not had a similar encounter again after that night. As a personal note, no matter how good of a neighborhood you live in, please be cautious at nighttime. Always be aware of your surroundings and make sure you are not alone if you are out at night. Anything could happen, even a few inches from your own home. Thank God my parents came home early. I've been lurking on this thread for a while, and decided to make an account and share my own creepy story. For your information, I'm a 21-year-old girl, and I was around 7 or 8 years old when the story took place. I grew up in the suburbs of a large city in Ohio. My neighborhood was like any stereotypical suburb. Really safe, lots of kids, all the parents knew each other, you get the idea. So, let me explain the layout to my house. For clarification in the story, when you walk in the front door, there is a living room, which my parents used as their office, and then the kitchen is straight ahead. First off, the kitchen to the left is the master bedroom. Near the front door, you went down about 8 steps, and we had a finished basement, which my sister and I used as our playroom and TV room. Then we had the traditional second floor, which had 2 bedrooms, for me and my sister. So, one night, my parents decided to go out with some friends of my dad's. So it's me, my sister Rachel, who was 9 years old at the time, and my dad's friend's son, Ben, which I believed was 12 or 13 years old. I remember him complaining to his dad, saying he was too old for a babysitter or whatever. My usual babysitter, Kristen, was watching all of us. She was about 17 years old at the time, and has been watching Rachel and I since we were toddlers. So the night starts out fine. Kristen ordered us pizza, and we were all watching TV in my basement. We had a large sectional L-shaped couch that we were all sitting on. It was against the wall that backed up to two large windows, which faced into the backyard. Since our basement was not a traditional basement, you could clearly see out to the backyard through the window area. So we're all watching a movie. I remember it was a new Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire, as this was around 2002 to 2003. We had been in the basement for a while. At around 10 p.m., I hear what sounds like someone walking around upstairs on the second floor. The ceiling in the basement lined up to where our bedrooms were on the second floor. I look at everyone else, and they heard it too. My house is older, but I still know what the sounds of people walking sounds like, as opposed to just old house noises. I have a large Labrador retriever, so I figured she's just upstairs walking around, and we all just ignored it. About 2 minutes later, I go upstairs to my kitchen to get water, and I notice my dog sleeping on the couch in my parents' office area. She had obviously been there a while, as she was in deep sleep. At this point, my 7-year-old self is freaking out, wondering who the fuck was walking around upstairs. Also want to point out that a month earlier, when Kristen babysat me and Rachel, she let us watch the original Halloween, so I had been convinced since then that Michael Myers was hiding around every corner of my house waiting to kill me. Who lets a 7-year-old watch that movie? But on with the story. I tell Christian that the dog is asleep on the first floor, so it couldn't have been her walking around. She looked a little nervous, but she tells me that the house is old and makes weird noises and to just watch TV and not to worry about it. So about 15 minutes later, we hear it again. We put the TV on mute and listen. The walking continues for about 10 seconds. After we mute the TV, then stops. At this point, we're all about to shit ourselves, and being the dumb kids we are, we decided to go upstairs and see what the fuck is going on, because looking for an intruder in your house always ends well, right? We take my dog with us. We go into mine and Rachel's room and don't see anything, but all of us were freaked out. We had all heard the same exact thing. We decided to go down the stairs to my parents' room. The plan was to lock the door and just keep it together until my parents and Ben's parents got back. My parents' room was the only room we had not thought to check, since it was on the first floor. We opened the door and turned on the lights, only to find the window wide open. We didn't have screens, no idea why. It was early November in Ohio. There was no way my parents had left the window open intentionally. At this point, I want to cry. After checking out the room and determining no weirdos are under the bed, Kristen closes the window, locks the door, and pushes a chair under the doorknob. Kristen decides to call my dad and tell him to come home. Why we didn't call 911, I don't know. I don't think any of us wanted to believe someone would actually break into my house. She picked up the phone and there's no dial tone. This was not unusual, as the phone in my parents' room was very old and frequently didn't work. It was one of those old phones you had to dial by twirling your finger in a circle. This was also before every 17-year-old had a cell phone, so we relied on landlines. Ben offers to run down to the basement and grab the other phone. He runs downstairs and is back in literally 15 seconds, and he looks like he's about to pee himself. He said when he went to grab the phone, he looked out the window that looks into our backyard and saw a person just standing there, about 50 feet away from the window, just looking straight into our house, not moving. Kristen decides we need to call 911. She clicks the green button to call, and there's no dial tone. Someone has been messing with the phones. Kristen brought up the idea of making a run for her car, but no one wanted to go outside after what Ben saw. At this point, it's past 11 p.m. My parents had said they would be home between midnight and 1 a.m., so we decided to just wait it out and try to not shit ourselves. We turned on the TV in my parents' room really loud to drown out any weird noises and just try to stay calm, knowing the door is locked and we have a large dog with us. Along with my baseball bat my dad kept under the bed. My parents ended up getting home earlier than expected, as they started to worry when they couldn't get a hold of us by phone to check in. We told my parents what happened and ended up calling the police and filing a report. Since we lived in a safe neighborhood, things like this were not a normal occurrence. When the police went out to investigate the phone issue, the phone line had been cut. There was also found 4 or 5 cigarette butts on the ground near the windows that looked into our basement where we had been eating and watching TV. We could clearly be seen through the curtains sitting on the couch. No one in my family smokes. Whoever broke in or tried to break in clearly had been watching us for a while and knew no parents were home. We never found out if someone was actually inside our house. The police searched all the rooms and nothing was missing or looked out of place. But the windows in me and Rachel's room were not locked. It was possible the man broke in through my parents' bedroom and then escaped out the second-story window. The drop would have been about 10 feet, so not impossible. The police took it seriously and patrolled my street for the next week. They never found the person who Ben saw, but the incident stayed with me for a long time. I was terrified to stay home by myself until I was almost 16 years old, and I made my parents buy thick curtains for the basement so no one could see into the house. I'm now a 21-year-old college junior, and I still get freaked out when I have to stay in my apartment alone. I still wonder to this day what the hell that person was doing and what their intentions were. I am not a religious person, but I thank God that my parents had the good sense to come home when they did. Who knows what would have happened had they stayed out any longer. So, to the weirdo who may or may not have been in my house, let's not meet like ever. Surreal bus ride home. Man with a gun tattooed on his forehead. Let's not meet. This happened a few years ago. It was a Friday after Thanksgiving, and I was on my way home from an internship at a hospital. It had been a busy day with a number of patients. When I decided to take a detour home from work to go to my favorite grocery store, I completely forgotten most people were off work due to the holiday. This is notable because my normal way home on the subway and bus went express and stopped at very well-lit secure parts of the city, and the other went down a dark road and the stops were not well lit. But I'd taken this bus home before, and during rush hour it was usually full of people. I wish I remember most people were off work the Friday after Thanksgiving. I got on the bus, nabbed a seat in the middle section where there were 3 seats that faced the back door of the bus. The seats in the front and back section of the bus faced the bus driver. From this vantage point, I could have been the back and front section of the bus. As the bus was pulling away, I noticed out of the corner of my eye an African-American man, this matters later, with a beard and a gun tattoo in the middle of his forehead. I have ridden on the bus with people with face tattoos and am heavily tattooed myself, but something about him seemed different. He looked angry, and there was a pistol in between his eyes. The area where I was riding the bus around is known for having significant gang activity and rivalries. Tattoos like the gun in this area are often symbolic of gang activity, like the role in a gang or a reason someone went to prison. Even if I was wrong, someone I did not want to mess with. I contemplated getting off at the next stop, but I saw in his hands a book about forgiveness. I thought since it seems like he was trying to turn his life around, I felt safer. Having ridden the bus around a lot often in less secure neighborhoods and working with and having persons living with serious mental illness, it is likely I had a false sense of bravado at the time. And being a youngish white woman, I am often correctly identified as working in health, education, or the social services. Therefore, I am generally left alone and not mistaken for rival gang activity, or being from a rival neighborhood, or carry tons of money to be mugged or a tourist, etc. Deciding there was nothing to worry about, this ride was no different than any others I had taken. I put in my headphones and settled in for the ride. That was not a wise choice. Every so often, I looked over and this man would look at me, scowl, and mutter something. At that point, there were a number of people on the bus, and he was seated far away, so I wasn't quite sure. Then proceeding to go back to my music. As the bus moved on, more and more people emptied out, and because it was November, it became dark. I was used to going into fairly insecure neighborhoods, so I focused on my music and took deep breaths. The bus passed by a university and emptied out even more. A couple stops later, a girl in her early 20s gets on. She has bright yellow dyed hair, headband with 2 yellow ears, exaggerated red blush on her face, a tail, is dressed in all yellow, and had a red backpack. On the backpack was a keychain, and on that keychain was, you guessed it, a Pikachu. While normally, I wouldn't take a second glance assuming that maybe she's going to a costume party or a fun kinky party or something like that. It was what wasn't there. Unlike normal, the bus itself was not packed full of people on their way home and to work. I felt like I'd entered the Twilight Zone, like a weird bus in the 3rd Harry Potter book when everything went topsy-turvy. I was on the bus with a Pikachu. I looked around at the empty bus with a man with a gun on his forehead, a Pikachu, and a couple of teenagers in the back seats. I've never been so thankful for teenagers in the back seats. Today is a holiday, and I should not be on this bus. We were getting close to where I lived when an Asian man with bleach blonde hair stumbles onto the bus and sits right next to the man with a gun on his forehead. The man with the gun tattoo twists his face into one of agony and moves to the first row of the back of the bus, close to where I'm sitting in the middle. Now I can hear him mumbling, and decide I need to turn down my music and keep my headphones in. What the fuck is a white person doing on this fucking bus? He mumbles. I focus on my breathing to stay calm. I am the only white person on the bus. I froze. But I wasn't sure. In this man's possibly deranged state, he thought the Asian man was white because of the bleached hair. And the man with a gun tattoo on his forehead was clearly exceptionally offended that the other man sat next to him. Don't you fucking worry. I'm gonna fucking get ya. I focus my eyes ahead, pretending my music is loud. The man with bleached hair gets off the bus. Don't you worry. I'm gonna find you and kill ya. One day when you least expect it, I'll kill ya. His voice was cold and calculated. Was he referring to me, I wondered. I'm not sure if he had a psychotic disorder or was a psychopath, maybe a combination of both. I'm not going to wait to find out, and all the ways that he's going to come for me. What the fuck are you doing on this fucking bus? I'll find you and I'm coming to kill ya. Don't worry, I'm gonna find ya. Whether he's talking to me or the man with the bleached hair, I was not waiting to find out. I knew I could not stop near my house. It was dark. And I never wanted him to be able to find me. We were about to pass a hospital and some emergency call boxes nearby that I could run to if he followed me out of the bus. There was usually security and police, and it was also a labyrinth as well. I had been lost many times in those halls. I was pretty sure I could lose someone, or at least come out the other end in a way that was nonsensical. Also, it was hospital complex area for blocks, no houses, so I figured for all he knew I worked there, was visiting a patient, or was going to the ER, etc. I had experience working with people living with psychotic disorders and knew 1, not to look at him or make eye contact, 2, act like everything was absolutely normal, no sudden movements. Wearing earphones, I hoped might also make it look like I was completely unaware of him. Picking up my groceries, I slowly and deliberately walked to the front of the bus without ever looking at him or in his direction. Quietly, I told the driver I would tell what stop I wanted. If I had requested the stop by pressing a button, it would have alerted the whole bus. The driver nodded. I'm pretty sure he heard the man a few times. It was dark enough that I pretended I was looking for my stop. After letting a few stops pass, I picked a well-lit stop with an emergency call box nearby, and I could get into the hospital quickly. I rushed across the street to the emergency call box and looked back to see if I had been followed. I saw him through the bus windows. The man with a gun tattooed on his forehead's mouth was twisted in a distorted yell, similar to when the man with the bleached hair sat next to him, like he was in anguish that I had disappeared. Turning around, I rushed into the hospital complex, through corridors to an exit by security, then ordered an Uber home. I'm still not sure if he meant me, or the man who sat next to him. Usually, I hope that he was mentally unstable enough or violent enough that he is locked up now, and therefore cannot come and find me. Always, man with a gun tattooed on his forehead. Let's not meet. Creepy agent. I don't know if I'm just being too paranoid, but I figured my story would fit here. and you guys will tell me what you think. I recently put up a resume on Sexy Jobs. It's a website where fledgling porn stars can branch out and meet professional sites that help them begin their careers. I've had a few 100% legitimate companies contact me, send me proof that they are real, and not simply people looking to take advantage of naive people. Until Jay contacted me. Jay called my cell phone before sending my profile a message, a no-no on the site, but I figured he was just eager to get going. He called about 5 times and texted me another 4 before I noticed. I had my cell phone on mute. During the conversation, he explained how he was a producer for a new TV show called 4 for the One, about 4 girls living and dating one man, and that he already had one girl on set, Caitlin. I could hear a female in the background, which set my mind at ease a little bit. He went on to tell me he refused to hire black girls, mixed girls, or fat girls, as they seemed to cause a lot of drama. He went on to tell me he loved my photos, and was surprised that I'd never worked in the adult industry before. He asked me if I'd be willing to relocate to Nevada for the duration of the show 1 year. I said that wouldn't be a problem. He said he would send me a burner phone and a Greyhound bus ticket overnight, and that he expected me to arrive there by mid-November. I spoke to a girl on the phone as well, who said she was Caitlin, but something seemed off. I can't put my finger on it, but I had a sick feeling in my stomach, and after we hung up, I texted him and asked him for a photo of the house, along with an address, what company he worked for, and a picture of him and Caitlin together. He emailed them to me. His email name was not the name he gave me through the phone. Again, not that odd. Some people in adult casting use stage names. The pictures of the house were decent, but when I looked closer, there was no way there'd be enough room for 5 people living there. Also, in the bathroom photos, I only saw 1 bottle of shampoo for men, nothing that would indicate Caitlin would be working there. He sent me a photo of Caitlin alone, a very pretty young woman, but the photo also looked like it'd be a Shutterstock photo, as it was from the waist up, and against the beautiful field. I reversed Google search and found her photo. My anxiety was getting higher, but at this point in my life, I needed a deal like this. So I emailed him back, asking again for the address, and specified I wanted a photo of them together. He did not respond until early this morning, stating that he has changed his mind and refused to work with me, seeing as he was willing to send me a photo and money to come there, and I still didn't trust him. I feel bad that I didn't trust him now, considering he was going to send those things, but I also feel that my requests weren't that bad. What do you guys think?